So this is one of our real life parenting stories, and a little bit of context with it was with one of our children. We won't name which one. They'll probably both be no, they're fine. That they're in the teenage years, and there had been some drinking that happened, and there had been some kind of picking up, and the young person not being okay and taking her home, and just not stuff that happens, but scary for parents. So within the context of that happening fairly recently, we had an agreement with our daughter that at a certain time she would check in with us and confirm the plans of where she was staying that night, and just make sure that she had arrived at her destination. And so at that time, I think it was actually a little bit after that time, Angus and I had been watching a show on television. I looked at my phone and I realized that she hadn't checked in.
Can I just
Yes,
1 second?
yes.
Just I think it's important to say that it was at this point written in stone that her phone should always be on and she should always be accessible, particularly late at night.
Yes, and especially because of what had happened, because we want to make sure that she's safe and okay. So at this point in time, nothing. And then we have, in our family, we agreed that we're all on the Find a Friend app for safety reasons. And so we go to the Find a Friend app on the iPhone, and there's no Find a Friend there's no dot showing up. Right?
No, that's
no, that's not true. That's not true. There is a dot showing up.
Oh my goodness, get your story straight.
That's right. There's other times where the dots are showing. There is a dot showing up. And so we're trying to reach her. We're like, oh, good. Her phone is on, because normally the phone is not on when these kind of things going. So the phone is on. And so we start calling, we start texting, and there's no answer. And so the dot is in one location, which is not where she's supposed to be. We can't get a hold of her. And then the dot moves to another location.
The dot's on the move.
The dot's on the move. The dot moves to another location, which is this park outside in LA. And so I'm like, Angus, she must not be okay. We've got to go get her. We've got to go get her. I mean, like, what? She's not calling. I don't know what's happened. Maybe she's passed out. Like, we just have to go.
It was like the FBI watching your target move deep into enemy territory, and we can't do anything about. They're off radio contact.
We've lost connection. So it's probably 12:30 at night by this point.
Yeah.
We were thinking we're going to be going to bed. So the two of us get into the car. And we're driving down, and the whole time we're driving, I'm looking at this dot. Now it's staying at the second location, but we're following this dot. And as we're driving there, and we're about half an hour away, and we're driving down Topanga Canyon. At one point, I said to Angus, and I don't know why I said it, but I just said, God, what if something's happened to her? Like, it just came to my mind. I wasn't really feeling like anything terrible had happened. I just thought, oh, she's got drunk and I don't know, passed out, like, which is not good. But I was like, at one point, I'm like, what if something terrible's happened? So I said this to Angus, and I think you can take over from there. Well, so we're driving, following the dot, and I say this comment to you.
That's right. And I think the thing that was so disconcerting, this was our first experience where, we've had many experiences where she'd kind of like disappeared off the ether. She's just not making any attempt to contact us. But this is the first situation where the phone is obviously on. We can see where she's going, but she's just not picking up. She's just not picking up, and we're calling and we're calling. And so we get to the point where, we better go and check things out and drive down there. And Rohini makes some comment about it.
I said that comment.
I don't know, but you make this comment. And I guess the backstory for me at that point is, I don't know, for whatever reason, I had been listening to a lot of cold case files, podcasts. There's a real fad for cold case files, and I had listened to probably 2 or 3 of them. So, and back to back. So I'd kind of had this in my mind that, all sorts of terrible things could happen. So as soon as she said that, my mind started like to get really engaged with this, like all the horrors that could have befallen our youngest daughter. So
we weren't saying which one.
Oh, right, we can cut that out. You have to cut that out, Anne.
No, it's fine.
She's going to figure that out. So in my mind, it's kind of like, oh my goodness, this is, she's been abducted. I mean, I was already, feeling pretty stressed out, but because I was already, really sped up, the whole idea of all those possibilities just came rushing into my mind. So I started to get a bit panicky. and started imagining all these horrible scenarios. And the dot had found its way to an area that, well, you know, it was an area I think a lot of teenagers maybe go to, but this time of night seemed unusual. So anyway, we get to this area. We're going to be specific about geographics. So there's a point on the coast where there's a lookout, so a lot of people will go there late at night. But it's not, you know, late at night. It's probably not the most desirable of points for your, you know, for your offspring to be to be walking around or whatever they're doing. Anyway, so we get there, and then the dot, and I guess the technology is not very well. It didn't at first seem very specific because it's kind of bouncing all over the place. And I guess with satellites, they're not. You know, they go in and out in terms of their fine tuning.
So we're these two parents wandering around the bluffs, looking at our phone, trying to find this blue dot. Sometimes it's over the cliff. Sometimes, and we're talking to people. Have you seen this girl? It's so, anyway.
Well, what's the worst part of it was that the dot kept fine tuning itself to a point where it was over the cliff. So I was getting completely freaked out because you're trying to sort of like work out an average as to where she might be with this dot. And more often than not, and it was bouncing about quite a bit, but kept pinging back to being over the cliff. And oh my God, she's been taken and she's been thrown over the cliff. So I was just so distraught by this point, really sped up, running around like a crazy man, asking people, you know, who were just like trying to mind their own business and have a nice romantic evening on a seat looking at the Pacific Ocean. Like, I've seen this girl, she's this high, just giving this full-on description. And they're like getting kind of a little annoyed at me at this point. And then there was this new ping that started to take place where it started like to take us back to the car park. And I thought, well, this is bizarre. But it then kept pinging back to this specific point, and it kept pinging back to this. There was like one solitary vehicle, excuse me, in the car park. So I walked over to the vehicle, and it kept doing, and it kept doing. And this point is like, oh yeah, it's telling us that the phone is in this car, and it kind of like I was looking in, trying to see what was going on. And then Rohini came up alongside me, and we both kind of like, yeah, there's something about this car, and it's the only car in the car park. And then finally, I managed to look through the back window, and there was a naked female torso in the back, head buried into the seat, and I just completely freaked out and thought, oh my goodness, it was one of those moments where my knees went to jelly. It was my worst case scenario just come to life in my mind. And Rohini's like,
well, you said, I'm going to smash the window.
I'm going to smash the window.
So he yells, I'm going to smash it. And I say, no, let's call 911.
Because it was locked and it wouldn't open. So as soon as Rohini said, I'm going to call 911, a door opened and a hand came out with a phone and saying, XX is not here.
She's not in the car. So we're handed this phone, which is our daughter's phone. We know she's not in the car, and the door just shuts. And so I'm looking at Angus. And then I say back to the car, I say, do you know where she is? And the door opens again, and they say, hang on a minute. And they shut the door. And then I don't know if the window opened or something, and they said, she's at this person's house. And which was where she was supposed to be, was what she had agreed upon.
All along, exactly where she said she would be.
And so we go there and we check. We couldn't just go home and leave her there. So we go there and let her know what's been going on. And she's been there since 9:30 at night, fine. And she had just left her phone in her friend's car, and she didn't think to call us and let us know that was what was happening, because we had been so adamant about her keeping her phone on her that she didn't want us to be angry with her. And so she, in a teenage mind, it made more sense to just kind of see if it would just go unmissed than to reach out and tell us and then have us get angry with her, which is, clearly on us, that she was afraid to tell us what had happened. So that
Yeah, because she'd lost a couple of phones, so she thought, "Oh my goodness, if I've done this again, they're not going to be thrilled with me at all." So she just decided to keep things really quiet.
yeah, so she was, I don't even know, maybe we woke her up. She was tucked up safe and sound at her friend's
And
house.
her phone had just dropped out in the friend's vehicle, and the friends, they decided, let's go to the bluff and have some fun, which we interrupted. I think the term is coitus interruptus.
Stop it, Angus. We thought this was a good story to share on many levels. One is just,
can I just say one thing?
Yes,
because it's kind of amusing thinking back. So these kids in the car, their wisdom was just telling them to play possum, to play dead. So they did a very good job at playing dead, because that's what I saw through the window.
Yeah.
Sorry.
But just to really highlight that parents do not have it all figured out. Like, we are on a major learning curve. We are figuring things out as we go along. It is, it's, for most parents, is new territory, how to deal with a lot of things that come up for teenagers and young adults. And so it's sort of, we're all doing our best. So any kind of compassion or patience you might have for parents, even the crazy ones like us, would always be appreciated. And the second part is to really, I think the story illustrates how we really are living in our own reality. And when Angus and I were talking about the story, the visual that came to mind is that we were each had our own set of virtual reality goggles on. And as Angus and I were driving down there, I had mine on that was like, oh my gosh, maybe she's passed out somewhere, maybe she's not okay. And Angus has his virtual reality goggles on, like, oh no, she's been abducted and she's like dead. And and our daughter is like in her virtual reality, like, I'm totally fine drinking milk and eating cookies at my friend's house, probably so innocent. And just like, we're all living in these different perspectives, and we're all seeing things, and they can be wildly different or they can overlap. But even when they're wildly different, I think it's where there's where the communication piece is so important, is that we can find common ground, that with communication, with understanding. And that's where I feel like we were, we had hit below the mark as parents, that we had a relationship with our daughter at that time where she couldn't just use her friend's phone and say, hey, I've lost my phone, but I want you to know that I'm, where I'm said I was going to be. And so don't worry. And, hopefully I'll find my phone. And if I don't, we'll deal with that.